Best of r/malicious compliance episode 147. Subscribe for edit videos daily. On my microphone and camera, sure. So some background info. I take around 1 hour to reach home from school, and I joined some club which has some weird rules, but that's not important to the story today. On to the story. So my teacher released us late from school, and I had around 15 minutes to get home in order to join the online call. Yes, we have school but no meeting in my country. Weird. I texted the organizers about me having to be late, and we came to the agreement that I would join the call as I walked home. When I joined the call, I immediately heard the organizers say on your camera, "Fine. Part 1 of malicious compliance complete." I turned on my camera and allowed the entire call to see the beautiful sky, followed by raindrops slowly falling down. But that wasn't even the funniest part. So moving on, I got on the public transport. It's a train, which, disclaimer, has really loud announcements and sounds and background noises essentially. For some reason the organizers believed it was an amazing idea to ask someone who is on their way home to turn on their microphone on public transport. Cue malicious compliance. I turned on my microphone and walked closer to the speaker things inside the train, letting the beautiful noises blast into the call and interrupt whoever was speaking. According to one of my friends who were already in the call, almost nothing could be heard by the rest of the people in the call, other than the next stop. The organizers ended up having me turn off my mic, and yes, that's my malicious compliance. Not as havoc-wreaking as many others in this sub, but hey, it was satisfying. Thank you. Next. But we have a contract. This happened between my good friend Alan and my former roommate Connor. Maybe they're real first names. Who can say for sure? Alan loves cars and Connor is a piece of work, to put it nicely. Connor never seemed to want for money, pretty sure his family was able to take care of him whenever it was needed. Connor loved contracts, for whatever reason. Alan had the chance to buy a Supra and Connor agreed to loan him the money, with a bit more loaned on top to cover other things, with the understanding that a contract would be written up detailing all the responsibilities for each of them. If Alan defaulted, then Connor could take the car. I'm not too familiar with the terms beyond that, but that's the general idea. Shortly after buying it, Alan finds out that the Supra has some major mechanical problems that were almost certainly covered up by the seller. But there's no real recourse for a private sale used vehicle here, so he's stuck with it. Connor, seeing a chance to get himself a deal, and thinking it might not be as hard to fix as Alan makes it out to be, offers to buy the car for a fraction of the original purchase price. Alan accepts if only so he's not stuck spending even more money than he already has. Cut ahead a few days and Connor has found out that it's not a cheap or easy fix, and, even with the lower purchase price, it will never be worth the total investment. So he wants to reverse the sale and give the car back to Alan. At this point, Alan has no desire to balloon his debt back up and take on a car needing thousands of dollars in repairs, so he declines. But then Connor points out that he has a contract that says Alan owes X dollars, and if Alan won't take the car back, he'll simply take that contract to small claims and compel payment. But that gives Alan a great idea. I refuse to pay. I guess you'll just have to repossess the car. The cherry on top? Since the loan was for more than the car purchase, and he had gotten some money back from selling the car to Connor, he actually came out ahead. Good thing he wanted a contract. Thank you. Next. Hours will be counted. I worked as a contract graphic designer for a large Canadian retailer that has a big cat as their logo. I had the habit of staying later to finish projects, but only charged for regular 9-5. As such, the supervisor and I had an unwritten agreement that I could show up a little late from time to time, since I always got the work done on time. One day, I'm coming in 25 minutes after 9 and the head of HR runs into me in the hallway. She asks if I'm just arriving to work. I tell her yes, and she immediately escorts me to the supervisor's office to rat me out. The supervisor tries to explain our agreement, but the HR manager tells me that if it happens again my contract will be terminated. From that day forward I started counting all my overtime and billing them for it. When asked why I was suddenly billing at a higher rate by management, I explained to them what had happened. A few weeks later I was offered a better job elsewhere, and decided I would show up late the next day. The HR manager saw me get there late and started stomping over, as she arrived, I handed her my resignation letter and walked out. I found out later that they ended up needing to hire 2 designers to keep up with the pace that I was keeping on my own. TLDR, supervisor and I have unwritten agreement that I can show up late because I stay late. HR manager catches me coming in late and threatens to fire me. I start billing them for all my overtime that I wasn't billing them for prior to that encounter. Thank you. Next. Ex-landlord says he'll see me in court. I take him to court instead and win. TLDR. Basically the title. Brief backstory. A couple years ago, I was in an apartment with my friend and younger sister. My sister was violent towards my friend and I ended up having to get a restraining order against her. She brought in a dog without permission, which caused some damage to the unit. I informed my landlord of the incidences of violence and the damage and sent him pictures. He basically told me to deal with it myself, which I did by getting the protective order. After this, my roommate questioned the legality of holding us responsible for her portion of rent. I told her it was, but she asked our landlord for a copy of the lease to show her uncle anyway, which admittedly was pretty stupid. Up until this point, our landlord had not asked us to leave due to my sister's actions, but he did after the lease was brought into it. We were out by the date he specified on the notice to quit, the first step in the eviction process before the eviction actually occurs. My roommate was there until midnight making sure the place was spotless. We moved to an apartment across the street. 2 weeks had passed since he was informed that we had vacated the unit, and we had not gotten anything regarding our security deposit. In our state, a landlord is required by law to either return the remainder of a security deposit within 2 weeks, or provide a letter itemizing what the deposit was used for. If they don't, the tenant is owed the entire deposit. If the withholding is willful, the tenant is owed double the original deposit. The landlord had actually told me that he would be going on vacation immediately after we vacated, so I returned our keys to him and waited to see if he would send anything. He never did. After consulting with a tenants' rights group to be sure I was in the right, I sent a pre-formatted letter 16 days after we vacated, which stated the specific laws regarding security deposits, and gave him our current address to send either the deposit or receipt to. The day after I sent this letter, I see him across the street, frantically running into the apartment for the first time since we moved out. I receive a text from him saying that he would return what's left of our deposit if he could get the apartment rented by the 1st of next month. I respond by telling him that, as the letter I sent explained, he forfeits the right to keep any of the deposit after the 2 weeks is up. He responded saying that he would see us in court and that we were nightmare tenants, and that this will be fun. He said he would also be taking us to court for the cost to relist and rent the apartment, which he claimed exceeded the amount of our deposit. After about a month or 2 of hearing nothing back, we decided to say fuck it and file a small claims suit against him, as he clearly wasn't going to follow through on his threats. As the person who had almost all communication with him, I was the plaintiff in the case. He brought a letter that was dated for the day he texted me, where he arbitrarily wrote in what he used the deposit on, and claimed he sent us the letter. That obviously didn't add up, which I thoroughly explained to the judge, as he had texted me that day saying that we would get some of the deposit returned, and that he had no proof that he actually sent that letter. He clearly just wrote it and printed it out for the court hearing. During the court hearing he also said a lot of false and victim blaming shit, such as implying that I participated in the violence that occurred, saying we caused damages that were definitely there when we moved in, and just attacking my character in general. The judge ruled that the withholding of the security deposit was willful and awarded us double the deposit. But of course that wasn't the end of it, and a few days before his deadline to pay us the money, he sends me a text just letting me know that the decision has been appealed. I didn't answer and showed up to court again, and lo and behold, it's more mudslinging and arguing about things that we already established in the first hearing. The judge upheld the original decision, and he eventually mailed me the check for double the deposit. In the memo line on the check where you can write the reason for the payment, he wrote, for gaining £20. But hey, I cashed that check and spent my half on a new gaming laptop, so I'd say I got the last laugh. I desperately wanted to text him and ask him if it was as fun as he thought it would be, but resisted the urge. Thank you. Next. You don't want me to speak in a foreign language? Okay, I am new to Reddit, so the disclaimer goes as always. On mobile, English is not my first language, excuse any formatting, spelling, or grammatical mistakes. Now, let's begin. A little backstory. I live in India and there, each state has their own local language. My parents migrated from one state, West Bengal, to the current state, Gujarat, even before my birth, so I am fluent in my mother tongue, Bengali, as well as the local language, Gujarati, in addition to Hindi, which is kind of the national language. Fun fact, I said Hindi is kind of national language, cause in India 22 languages have the status of being official language, so we do not have a fixed national language. Now onto the story. This happened a few years ago. After graduating, I started learning French in a French affiliated institute, while simultaneously working the front desk. So from admin staff to teachers and even the director of the institute knew me well. I was studying in the advanced class when the institute introduced a free demo session for promotional purposes, and some of the aspiring French teachers from the advanced level class were selected to assist the teacher in this class to get first-hand experience, including me. Each class just had a capacity of 5 people, reservation basis. Now, I was supposed to work my shift in the front desk and then go to the class to assist the faculty. So, between the two I had a 15 minutes window to stuff my face with some food. Our institute had a cafe which was managed by an ex-classmate of mine who also happens to be from my homeland. So I ordered a cup of coffee with a sandwich and sat down to chit-chat with him for a minute. On our next table was 5 Indian version of Karens. Weirdly fitting clothes, way too much of makeup, an odd sense of entitlement and complaining about everything. You see where this is going yet? I was talking to my friend in Bengali and these motherfuckers at us to grab our attention and went on a monologue about how us foreigners are ruining our sacred land. It should be mandatory to speak in the local language, and who knows what they are talking about. They may be even bullshitting and trash talking about us. The last one was, however, spot on, as by that point we had started sniggering about these ignorant beaches, pun intended. This got them all agitated and the Queen Beach started getting louder, saying shame on you for speaking all this blah blah languages. You are in Gujarat. Speak in Gujarati, and left after paying her bill and huffing and puffing with her sidekicks. I was so confused and irritated by this point, but shocked as this hasn't happened to me before. I simply paid for my snack and headed upstairs for the class. I met the head faculty in the hallway and recounted what just happened, laughed and went into the class. Not even 2 minutes later I see the 5 Karens entering the same room. I quickly whisper to my senior teacher that these were the morons and she whispers something back. We maliciously comply to their request and teach the entire hour-long French class in Gujarati. How? We wrote a word on the board and go on to explaining what it means in Gujarati without even pronouncing the word. They were bored, couldn't pronounce a single word and didn't even understand most contexts. Around the end of the class my teacher said something along the lines of if everyone spoke their local languages in their local regions then others would have never learned a new language. And then I added in a chirpy tone that you would have had to visit France to learn French. But you are lucky to have our esteemed institute. Do consider joining us. The ladies slowly gathered their belongings and left the class. They didn't sign up for any program, but we believe they wouldn't anyways. P.S. Do I or my senior teacher feel bad for not teaching them properly? A bit. Do we regret doing it? Nah, thank you. Next. Don't refuse a delivery on a holiday weekend. On mobile device. So the usual blah, blah, blah. Was talking with the old boss that I used to work for. I'm at a different company now, but left on good terms, and remembered this background so people have an understanding. I drive semi and at the time I worked for a dairy delivering milk and other products to grocery stores. All days were the same except for Saturday. On Saturday my last stop was a Walmart and I didn't like dealing with one of the people who checked in deliveries. They had 3 people who rotated being in charge on Saturday. So this happened early on a Saturday morning over Labor Day weekend in 2009. Because of the holiday weekend stores took larger amounts than normal because of the holiday Monday. Everything went smoothly at first 3 stops, but the last didn't. When I arrived at the docks that normally had 1 or 2 open, there was a line of trucks waiting. I wasn't surprised and don't mind waiting, because I get paid for waiting. About a half hour later it was my turn to get a doc. So I backed in and then went inside to see the witch, as people called her. She was busy with a soda delivery and I went about collecting the empty crates and put on my trailer after pulling the incoming dairy to the trailer tail. Walmart loads of cooler or frozen items are temperature checked before being accepted. So you leave it on the trailer until they are ready to check your load in. So it's finally my turn to be checked in and I open the trailer door and start pulling their order out. Which, put that back on your truck. I have beer and soda that need in first. Me, I'm not leaving until you check it or refuse it. Holding the invoice out to her, she signed and dated it, refused with no reason for refusing. I put everything back on and secured it. Then pulled off the dock and parked out of the way, then took a picture of the invoice and texted my boss it before calling her. Told her what happened, and I already know that store will be out of milk this afternoon. Boss, so it was never tempted? Me, correct. So when they call later looking for the milk, tell them it was refused for no reason and check the cameras. Boss, well they are not getting any till Tuesday now. Don't worry, you're covered. So I took and put the product back into the plant cooler in good product return area. I didn't hear anything until Tuesday when I returned from that day's route. Boss, you were right, they ran out about 2 in the afternoon and called in a panic. Told them what happened and I'm not paying a driver double time to fix their mistake and check the security cameras. So Saturday comes and I expect to be cussed at both by the dock people and management of the Walmart because of last weekend's disaster. Instead I was greeted with smiles and thanks. The manager showed up also. It seems that was the mistake that he was waiting for to fire the witch. Thank you. Next. Only natural colors. In high school, my best friend was a self-proclaimed performance artist slash fashion designer, and he loved to customize his clothes and whole appearance in general. By the time this happened, he had already gotten in a lot of trouble because he would constantly defy our school's dress code by adding color patches to his uniform, wearing bow ties instead of our formal black ties, embroidering arabesque patterns in his pants, etc. The point is, he was already on the watch list of all teachers and school supervisors. One day, this guy decided to appear with blue highlights on his hair. I just facepalmed so hard it hurt for a while but didn't say anything to him. By this point, either he did this on purpose to test our teacher's patience. The moment our homeroom teacher saw him, his was sent to the principal's office. And this is where the malicious compliance starts. The principal told him he could not dye his hair, but my friend told him there was no rule related to hair dye on our dress code as far as I'd seen. Then our principal committed the worst error by showing him the dress code included the next phrase: students' hair must remain groomed. Males are prohibited from wearing long hair and only natural hair colors are allowed. And this is going where you would expect it to go. My friend happily said to our principal he was going full natural since then on and left the office with the biggest smile on his face. I was waiting for him outside, but he refused to tell me his plan when I asked why he was so happy. The next day, I almost fainted when I saw him. His hair was pure white. Jack Frost / Elsa level white. Even his eyebrows were snowy, like before he was sent to the office. But since white is technically a natural hair color, our principal couldn't punish him under the school guidelines. My friend spent the next 8 months changing his hair color to natural tones including bright auburns and blondes. Every time he came with a new shade, you could see the literal pain in our teachers' and principal's eyes. After the school year was over, our principal could finally change the dress code, under our own rules. The rule book couldn't be modified midway during the year, to include the appendix students can't dye their hair, finally stopping my friend's colorful reign of terror.